Matthew, as a business matter, somebody at the top of TD Bank is just looking at this, shaking their head. How could the head of the financial intelligence unit allegedly be involved in this with nobody detecting it? The regulatory agencies obviously require some form of monitoring
Right.
to figure out, are people doing the right thing inside the bank? And also,
Right.
allegedly, there were a couple other well-placed insiders placed throughout the company in positions where they could kind of steer those sorts of continuous monitoring things away. What's your take?
Absolutely. The Colombian trafficking organization that was referenced here clearly knew what they were doing. If you look at that clip with Pedro, they recruited somebody different to do each step that he detailed. And they picked exactly the right person at each level, at a local branch, at the higher ups that could facilitate that. Just like you mentioned, including the head of the financial intelligence unit. And when the person who's supposed to oversee your system of catching this stuff is complicit with it, it becomes quite simple to get away with it at that point.
Yeah, I'm looking at the case, and apparently the Department of Justice is saying that there are criminal investigations into individuals at just about every level of the company.
That's right. They had
It's a thorough compromise.
correct. I know that there was somebody at a local branch in Florida that's recently been named.
Mm-hmm.
They were responsible for doling out debit cards to the different cartel members. There was somebody up in New Jersey, I believe, that's also been named at this point, who was actually setting up the accounts separately. And then, of course, several people, I believe, in their counter fraud office who were supposed to catch this. And there was a separate bank as well, a separate branch where somebody was taking in the bulk cash for them, which we can get into in a minute what that is and why that's so difficult. But this person was caught doing it up to $1 million a day in bulk cash. You're only supposed to be able to bring $10,000 in cash into a bank without a currency transaction report associated with it.
I'd be interested in seeing your thoughts on the counterintelligence aspect of an operation like this. Going back to the original DOJ complaint, or the information at least that they've released, this was a failure of anti-money laundering detections, more than it was some really successful penetration of a bunch of insiders. According to some of the literature I've read, if the bank had followed the AML fundamentals, they would have detected this long ago. And so one thing you said earlier, hey, they presented themselves as a soft target because they weren't doing, allegedly, the type of AML that they should have been doing, where they would have detected this. So let's say they were doing the right AML, and this was just a total breakdown of the system to detect money laundering activities. That would tell me that there was some counterintelligence happening, whether they knew that's what they were doing or not. They were still using the fundamentals to have those conversations off of corporate communication channels where they couldn't be monitored. From what you've seen or been a part of, when you've got lots of insiders at different levels of the company in different branches, you've got the external partners involved in the operation, which allegedly are China-based threat actors and Colombian cartel-based actors. What were they communicating with each other? Is that how that would work? Was there one person who would have been the facilitator for the network? Was it all ad hoc and everybody got lucky? From what you know, how would this operation work? In terms of like terrorist support structures, right? This is
Sure.
AML support structures.
Sure.
Not AML, but ML support structures.
Right. So I think it's important to keep in mind how large the money laundering operations for an organization like a cartel this size actually are. This would be a drop in the bucket for them as far as what they're doing globally. And the way that they approach it from their own CI is they keep things very compartmented. There's not someone who runs all of this for them all over the world. When opportunities come up and go down in that world, it's, hey, this cryptocurrency thing is something we can use right now. Let's take advantage of it. Then that little segment, that compartment of the criminal organization takes advantage of it. And that can be because they have relationships like this one with China, just in that pocket. And say some of their operations somewhere else are not taking advantage of the same network to move their money. And so it can be very compartmented. They do this for several reasons. One is when things go bad, they know where to look. Same way as a traditional counterintelligence program like you were involved in would do. But also, you don't want to bring problems from somewhere else to a situation that's working. This is the first time a U.S. bank in the history of this country has ever pled guilty to money laundering. It is the
The bank
largest bank,
itself or the people involved?
the bank. It is the largest where, let me make sure I'm saying this right, where they pled guilty to the Bank Secrecy Act. So the largest of that. But they
Hmm.
actually pled to money laundering charges
Hmm.
above it. And that's never happened before. And so part of this coming to an end could have been a lot of people saying, nobody ever gets in trouble for this. This has never happened. So why wouldn't it continue to go the way it's going? So I don't think anybody expected that um, from the cartel side.
Either way, you got to exploit all of that successfully across many jurisdictions so that all of your extended network are safe.
Right.
Any one person that gets wrapped up in something is now a loose string that can be pulled by law enforcement agencies, and you start unraveling.
Right.
So compartmentation comes in, like you were mentioning earlier in the episode, as being an important counterintelligence consideration, keeping people completely separated from one cell to another, one jurisdiction to another. Either way, it sounds to me like an operation like this that went on so long, yes, it was probably somewhat simplistic in recent terms, like in light of the technological environment that we have today versus 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it was professional in that there was a process that we've seen in countless other cases that only unravels if something goes wrong.
That's right. And, one of the things you mentioned was keeping up with jurisdictions. All of those jurisdictions don't have static laws forever. One thing that was proposed this year was the Corporate Transparency Act in the United States, which was we're going to require the beneficial owner information to be exposed for every company, even if it was held by a trust. So when, traditionally Wyoming has been one of the best offshore jurisdictions because of the trust laws. Also a jurisdiction like Nevis, which can couple with banking in Belize. But if the law changes and all of a sudden you still have all of your stuff there and you didn't rip it out in anticipation of it, then all of a sudden you're doing something illegal on Tuesday that wasn't illegal on Monday. And so it takes a lot of regulatory studying constantly by lawyers to stay ahead of, and it's an extremely complicated business to be in.